War is expanding in Iran. I'm Kaylem Shepherd. Welcome to this special edition of the Memo. Lives are being changed across the Middle East and in fact across the world. Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Lebanon. Is this the beginning of World War III? Well, joining me now to discuss more on this is Sam Kiley, World Affairs Editor at The Independent. Sam, thank you very much for joining me here on the Memo. You're joining us down the line. Can you just give us the sentiment of what you think is happening on the ground in Iran?
Well, the sentiment, I can only guess at, but what we know is happening, what are we now, Wednesday, this all kicked off, I think, on Saturday morning, is that the United States and Israel have launched this extraordinary, unsanctioned attack against a sovereign nation, albeit a nation that is a state sponsor of terror. There is no doubt about that, that was trying to build a nuclear weapon that does have the intent to wipe Israel off the face of the earth and is in general a very bad regime. But it has, over the last few days, seen Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and a lot of his top leadership killed in an Israeli airstrike that Donald Trump said was conducted alongside American intelligence. And we've also seen a real counterattack from the Iranians right across the Gulf region and even further. A Shahed fired probably by Hezbollah out of Lebanon was that hit Akatori British RAF base in Cyprus. Another Shahed was shot down today by the Turks. And of course, missiles have hit Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Oman, and the Iranians are strangling oil exports through the Straits of Hormuz. So there's been a counterattack, and it is an extraordinary moment in history, I think, Kenan, because what we're seeing here is not even any attempt by the United Nations to be consistent with international law. Indeed, they're completely contemptuous of it. Another detail today, which is pretty shocking to me anyway, is the sinking of a Russian frigate off the coast of Sri Lanka on its way back from exercises with India, with reportedly 80 dead, 32 survivors, other people missing, nothing but an oil slick left on the surface. Now, that's a very long way away indeed from the fighting. And talking to a very old friend of mine who's been involved in Middle East conflicts for most of his life, he made the point that this is, if ever there was one, an outright act of war, a preparation for much more serious expansion of operations to come. The Americans haven't ruled out boots on the ground, but I'd be amazed if that is part of their plan. The big question is, do they have one?
Sam, there's a big question about international law. So Keir Starmer says that he's not going to support Donald Trump and Israel when it comes to this invasion, this war, whatever you want to call it, regime change. What does international law actually mean when it comes to conflicts like this?
Well, you're right to put your finger on, I think, what's been a problem for me personally with so-called international law all the way through my too many years of covering conflicts, which is that they kind of require a system of regulation that suggests that this is some kind of sport. It's not a sport. War is not a sport. War is an activity essentially based around do what I say or I'm going to take your children by the ankles and dash their brains out against a tree. That's what war is. And anybody who thinks otherwise is being extremely naive. And we've seen that vividly in the northern suburbs of Kyiv following the Russian invasion, where civilians were murdered in order to try to get the civilian population to collapse. So at its worst, that's what it is. Since the Second World War, though, the United Nations, a formation or a construct, among others, created by Britain, had its first meetings in Westminster, not in the cathedral, but in the Methodist meeting house there. Not in the cathedral, rather, not in the Parliament either. But this is an organisation which tries to get a grip on the very worst excesses of humanity. It doesn't always pull it off. It's essentially governed by the Security Council, and that in itself is problematic. But it does mean, it has meant, that people at least have jumped through the hoops of trying to get some kind of international sanction. In other words, a UN Security Council resolution that would allow the use of force. We didn't see that in a strict sense with the American-led invasion of Iraq in 2003, which turned out to be a catastrophe for the region
Yeah.
and indeed for the whole world. And we haven't, but we did see efforts made by Blair and the Bush administration and others to try to get that sanction, and all sorts of legal wriggling to essentially claim that they did have it. In the case of Iran, Hegseth has said, we're not interested, absolutely not interested. We're just going to go for it, and it's total war. He smugly described the deaths of 80 people in this frigate sinking as what he said was quiet deaths with some relish. And so we're seeing a new level of, well, from one perspective, perhaps it's more honesty, and on another perspective, without question, it's more vulgarity.
Sam, I'm just eager to know, Putin could be watching this in Moscow right now. Do you think he could be emboldened to now drop bombs on Zelensky's head?
I think he's going to be watching this thinking there's an awful lot of air defenses being used by American forces and their allies, namely Patriot and THAAD missile systems that are being shot up into the air to defend the Gulf nations and Israel against incoming Iranian rockets and Shaheds, and thinking, well, there's going to be a shortfall, therefore, in what's available to Ukraine, and I'll just wait a few days and then up the ante there because there'll just be less of it to be used. The inventories, I think, are being run down without question.
Hey everybody, I'm Kaylem Shepherd. Thank you very much for watching the podcast. Please just take a second to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure it's available on your podcast app. That can be Spotify, it can be Apple. The Memo with me, Kaylem Shepherd, wherever you get your podcast. Once again, thank you for watching.
As are the inventories and capabilities of the Iranians to keep shooting these missiles. But they're very expensive, these missile systems. They're really important for the Ukrainian perspective, is shooting down ballistic missiles, the missiles that shoot up into the stratosphere and beyond, and then come down at 5 times the speed of sound. Those are really difficult to shoot down with anything other than a THAAD or ideally a Patriot, and they're millions of dollars each, and they take a long time to produce, and there's not many of them. And Putin knows that, and Zelensky's made this point time and again.
Sam, you've been to many conflicts around the world, and as you know, better than I do, and better than probably most of us do, it's the people on the ground that are affected the most. Can Iran come back from this?
Well, it depends what Iran wants to do. So what we're seeing at the moment is a strengthening of the grip of the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is the hardliners. There's about 150,000 of them. We haven't seen anything one way or the other from the regular Iranian armed forces, except for the Navy, who the Americans have said they're going to utterly destroy. The Americans might be hoping for some friction there to open up. We have seen reports of, and confirmed reports, that the White House has been reaching out to Kurdish groups in northern Iran via northern Iraq, which of course is a semi-autonomous Kurdish region, to try to get them to rise up. That is deeply problematic because the Persians of the rest of the country do not want to see the Kurds break away. So a Kurdish uprising there would very unlikely stimulate a wider democratic revolution, but it could stimulate a civil war, and it could indeed cement the Persians, who were very deeply divided, in opposition to the Kurds. So that's a very, very foolish adventure if that one comes off. But inside Iran, we're not yet seeing a popular uprising because I think the security forces have still got a grip on the system, and also it's extremely dangerous to go outside. The place is being pounded by America. The Americans haven't ruled out using troops on the ground. If they did use troops on the ground, that would definitely turn into a quagmire, and be interesting to see what America's allies would do then.
Sam Kiley, World Affairs Editor of The Independent, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, I'm Kaylem Shepherd. Thank you very much for watching the podcast. Please just take a second to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure it's available on your podcast app. That can be Spotify, it can be Apple. The Memo with me, Kaylem Shepherd, wherever you get your podcast. Once again, thank you for watching.